Virginia, a state that seems to have it all. There's mountains to climb and slopes to ski on and beaches to hang out and delicious seafood. It's one of the wealthiest and most successful states of all when you measure income levels and education. Some good people all over the state. The mountain folk are kind and generous and look out for one another too. And while Old Dominion might seem like a good place for a vacay, it might not be where you want to plant roots. Well, at least not in the 10 cities we're going to talk about. We took a lot of data into account when we decided how to rank the worst places to live in Virginia. Stuff like crime rates and unemployment rates and poverty and education and more. Plus, I took into account your opinions, Virginians. That's right, the places you guys say are the bad places to live. So while Virginia is for lovers, there's not a lot to love in the places we're going to talk about. Let's begin. We begin our tour of the worst places to live in Virginia with a stop in South Boston, a city with a population of nearly 8,000 people located east of Danville on Route 58 in Halifax County. South Boston makes this list, frankly, because its economy is in the tank. People living here are struggling to make ends meet, sadly, and the future isn't very bright either. Home values are the 14th worst in the state, and the city's unemployment rate's nearly 7%. And despite South Boston's small-town feel and decent public schools, the city's crime rate is pretty high. It's way over the state average and way over the national average too. Folks living here have a 1 in 24 chance of being the victim of a crime. It's not just a crime though. Drugs are a huge problem here in South Boston too. Local cops say it's not uncommon to find individuals passed out in their cars or on a sidewalk or alongside the road. Come on, South Boston, you can do better than that. To the mountains we go for number 9 on our list. Welcome to Richlands, a small city of about 5,300 people. It's located way out in the middle of nowhere along a winding road known as Route 460. Richlands is also struggling economically, with just over 8% of its residents out of work and the second worst home values in the state. Seriously, when homes are priced around $85,000 each, you know there isn't much demand to live here. I mean, it's pretty up here, and if you want some space and don't need much in terms of entertainment, it's okay. And it's not just the low incomes or the cheap homes that make this city undesirable. Richlands has some of the worst schools in Virginia. In fact, the public schools here get the least amount of funding in the state. And it shows. 25% of adults living here never earned a high school diploma. The story's much the same at our next stop, number 8, Marion. This small city of about 5,700 people is wedged in the Allegheny Mountains on I-81. Marion has a slightly lower unemployment rate than Richlands at about 7%, but the people are really poor and the home values are still awful, the 5th worst in the state. And the public schools are still way underfunded. So why is Marion a worse place to live than Richlands? Crime. The city has an overall crime rate that's 129% higher than Virginia's average and way higher than the U.S. average. If you live here, you have a 1 in 22 chance of being the victim of a crime. Pretty scary, considering the small population. I mean, you're going to know who done it. Get this, Marion's nicknamed America's coolest hometown. And we agree. If they're talking about the weather, Marion has some of the coldest temperatures in the state. Aside from that, though, there's really nothing that cool about Marion, unless you like crime, poverty, and crappy schools. Sorry, Marion. At number 7, we move to the southwestern section of the state to Roanoke, a much bigger city with a population of 100,000 people. Now, if you're an outdoor enthusiast, you may have your eye on Roanoke. It was once called one of the top mountain biking destinations in the world. It's really close to the Appalachian Trail. But you may want to pump those brakes. Roanoke also comes with its own share of problems, including a flat economy, high crime, and subpar school system. Seriously, the unemployment rate here is over 6%, and about 1 in 5 people here fall below the poverty line. Not to mention the local crime rate comes in almost double the U.S. standard. If you live in Roanoke, you have a 1 in 21 chance of being the victim of a crime. So if you move up here to mountain bike, you sure might want to lock that bike up at night. At number 6, located in the south central part of the state, along the North Carolina border, is Danville. The city's home to over 41,000 people. Now, a lot of people say Danville's the worst place to live in the state, and they'd have a good argument. While it used to be one of the richest cities in the area, Danville struggled since its tobacco and textile mills shut down a few decades ago. The local economy only supports a median income of over $37,000, and 9% of people are out of work, and those numbers are terrible for Virginia. Crime here is also a problem. Danville's crime rate's way above the state average and way above the national average too. If you live here, you'd have about a 1 in 20 chance of being the victim of a crime. And while it's not all bad in Danville, I mean, the city has a rich history and it's trying to revitalize its downtown area. Do you really want to live in one of Business Insider's top 50 most miserable cities? I don't. We have to travel about 2 hours east to get to our next stop. And number 5, located on the North Carolina border, again, is Emporia, with a population of just over 5,400 people. I think we're starting to see a pattern here. Most of the worst places to live in Virginia are in the mountains or on the southern border. Emporia is best known for 2 things: race cars and speeding tickets. That's right, the Southampton Motor Speedway sits just about 20 minutes outside of town, and NASCAR brothers Elliott and Ernie Sadler were born and raised in the city. As for the speeding ticket part, Emporia is located at US 58 and I-95, and it's widely considered the most notorious speed trap in Virginia. So slow down, y'all. Emporia is one of the least populated cities in the state of Virginia, and for some people that's a good thing, but it's also one of the poorest too. More than 23% of its residents are unemployed, and those who have jobs earn under $27,000 a year. 1 in 4 people don't have a job. And for a city this small, the crime is outrageous. Emporia's crime rate is far above the state average, like almost double. If you live here, you have a 1 in 22 chance of being the victim of crime yourself. Next, at number 4 is Galax, a small town of about 6,500 people located in the Appalachian region of the state. Here we go again. Now, if you like small towns and mountain scenery and old-time music, Galax may be the perfect place to plant roots. But before you go buying any property, listen up. Home values in Galax are some of the lowest in the state, about $100,000, which is good, right? But the unemployment rate's one of the highest. 12% of folks here are out of work. And those who found jobs earn under $34K a year, which is well below the poverty line for a family of 4. It's the 5th lowest income in the state. And then there's the crime. You have a 1 in 25 chance of being the victim of a crime here. And sure, most of the crimes here aren't violent. It's usually people just stealing stuff or drugs. But if you have nice things, you may want to steer clear of Galax. Not to mention, if you're not into exploring the outdoors, you have to drive pretty far for some fun. And if you are into exploring the outdoors, the weather here is usually pretty crummy for half the year. But hey, at least there's the Galax Smokehouse with its award-winning barbecue. Booyah! Next on our list at number 3 is the coastal city of Portsmouth, which nearly 94,000 people call home. Portsmouth is part of the Hampton Roads area, and it's on the western side of the Elizabeth River, directly across from Norfolk. It's home to a naval shipyard and a naval medical center. While Portsmouth is full of history and beauty, it's also full of problems. Folks living in Portsmouth on average earn about $23,000 a year, and that's if they're lucky enough to find a job. The public school system is one of the lowest rated in the area, and home values are dropping. People here say there's not much to do. They have to travel to Norfolk or Virginia Beach for entertainment, and that results in tunnel tolls and sitting in traffic. No thanks. And with battleships in your backyard, you might feel safe, but don't be fooled. Portsmouth is actually the most dangerous city in Virginia, ranking number 1 in both violent and property crime, with an overall crime rate 3 times higher than the state average, folks. People living here have about a 1 in 100 chance of being the victim of a violent crime. Not just any crime, we're talking like an attack, a robbery, or a damn murder, son. At number 2 on our list of the worst places to live in Virginia is Petersburg. This city of about 31,000 people is located about 20 miles south of Richmond, and it was the site of a famous Civil War battle. And while folks here are proud of their history, there's not much else to be proud of, I don't think. Petersburg suffers from a tanking economy, with nearly 12% of its residents out of work. It has the 3rd worst unemployment rate in the state. You can snatch up a historic home for not much money, but that's about the only plus. The school system's dismal, and the city recently came close to being bankrupt. The crime is through the roof too. Pretty scary. And while there are some decent restaurants and great antique stores in town, you're gonna have to leave Petersburg for anything else fun to do. If anybody tells you the city's on its way up, they've been saying that for decades. It never happens. At number 1 on our list, the worst place to live in Virginia is Newport News. What? More like bad news, right? Even folks who live here call it that, and I think they're right. The city has a population of about 180,000 people. It's located on the peninsula side of the Hampton Roads in the Tidewater region of the state. Newport News is a big military town and home to a state war museum, but the real fighting's happening on the city's streets. Newport had the 4th highest overall number of murders per person in the state and ranked 9th in the category of violent crime overall. Folks living here had about a 1 in 167 chance of being the victim of violent crime. The city's known for gangs, drugs, and assaults, and folks living here say they hear gunshots and police sirens here every single night. Play the game. Gunshots, fireworks. Aside from crime, the schools are average but poorly funded. The road maintenance is almost non-existent, and people complain about the traffic and the bad drivers. And if that wasn't enough, is there really anything to do here for fun? Unless you're a drug trafficker. So that's it. The worst places to live in Virginia. For some people, the mountain towns are charming, and they're perfectly happy there, despite the poverty and crime. Well, that's great. There's a perfect place for everybody. Now, if you're looking for the best places to live in Virginia, sadly, they're all going to be the snobby areas outside of the DC metro area. But it's all very safe and quiet, and people have good jobs and good neighborhoods up there. So if you live up there, go out to some fancy snobby DC restaurant, celebrate, and get some cured country ham while you're at it. Yeah, right. People in Nova don't eat that stuff. People in Virginia, they used to be farmers. People in Virginia were the first ones to farm. Now Virginia's becoming so different. Now Virginia has a lot of new stuff in it. People in Virginia don't like those in Nova. Southern rednecks can't believe the war is over. If you're rich here, it's from old money or DC. If you're poor here, there's a chance you live near the trees. Man, Virginia is so old, but Virginia's getting newer. Why can't the people just get along? Why can't you all just love each other? After all, you're in the same state. Jeez, you're on the same side. Virginia is for lovers. 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 Yeah. Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great. You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also click one of these videos or playlists for more. You can also now buy my songs on iTunes and other formats. Click the link in the description. Thanks for watching. And remember, while we all might have different views, we should all be nice to each other and try to make the U.S. a better place in a positive way.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.